parallel universes. Now this is a very, very interesting subject, and perhaps much more we will realize as we go into it, that it's really part of us all of the time. And I'm sure that the things I'm going to say will surprise you, but nevertheless make a lot of sense when you start to think about it. Now, I want to start off with a little story. A little story about a shipwreck. A small ship with half a dozen families were sailing in the Pacific, and they came near an island and they ran aground. And unfortunately, everyone was drowned except for this little boy. And this little boy managed to escape, and he was 7 or 8, so he wasn't old enough to be mature and to absorb what was going on. On the other hand, he knew how to get around, and he took food and other things from the ship, and he swam backwards and forwards, and he managed to survive. Now, the island was completely deserted except for a troop of monkeys. And those monkeys saw he's a little boy, he can't do him any harm, and they sort of adopted him, and they taught him all sorts of things. And within a few years, he was swinging from tree to tree, just like the monkeys, and enjoying himself a lot, because kids like being monkeys at times. Sometimes when they grow up, they haven't changed. And he got used to eating their bananas and other food they ate when the food from the ship ran out. And he carried on like this, and gradually his whole of his past became another universe. It was not there. He, every now and again when something happened, a flash came into his mind, but he was now living on this island and enjoying himself because he wasn't alone. He almost became their toy. And one day a ship was going by, and he looks through his binoculars, the captain looked through his binoculars and sees a little boy running around with monkeys. So he sent some of his men on a boat to go and see what's going on. And they went up to the boy. The boy was very happy to see other people that don't look like monkeys. Of course, he hasn't seen himself for a long time. And what they did, they were clever enough to bring a mirror with them. And he saw that he was part of them, not part of the monkeys. And so they took him back they said, look, well, let's take you back to the ship. We'll give you a nice hot meal, and you can meet the captain, and then you'll go back again. And so they brought him to the ship, and the captain sat down, gave him a meal, talked to him, and told him stories, and gradually they sailed away. And they took him to another island. For him, it was another universe. And as he's sailing along, the captain liked that little boy and started to teach him about life, teach him almost everything from the beginning. Yeah, he remembered small things that came back to him, but he had no education. It was lost. And gradually memories came back. And then the captain said, I want to tell you how you got into this world. He said, when you were a little baby, before you were born, you're inside your mother's womb. And he described the womb, and that was all liquid, all water. Your lungs were flat. If you breathed, you were dead. A little bit of air gone in, you're finished. You were attached with a pipe to your mother where you got all your food. If that was cut or damaged while you were in your mother's womb, you were finished. And you were completely attached to this environment, totally in liquid. You could hear your parents talk. You could hear the music played. And you gradually learnt within your mother's womb. Then one day, you popped out through a dark tunnel and suddenly into light, and if there were other babies inside there, in that baby world, then you would actually die, because your lungs had to open to take in air. The cord connecting you to the mother for food was cut, and now you had to survive. And they threw water at you in order to make you gasp and start crying, and this is how you started to breathe. In fact, every time you cried, that was good for your lungs. Now, technically, you were dead from the other universe. You lived in that universe, and now, as far as that universe is concerned, you're no longer alive. And yet you are alive, in a different world, different experiences now. And so this is how you came into this world. Of course, this was all new for the little boy, and usually you don't tell a little boy of 8, even when he was with his parents, what went on, and yet they're curious. And so we see in all of our lives that we have a situation where we think that person or that plant or that flower or that tree died, or the animal died. And that's what we see. When a farmer plants seeds, or we do at home sometimes, you open it up afterwards, you see the seed has it's rotted. How can life come out of that? And yet, one of the miracles, just like a little baby being born, gradually it starts to sprout, and new flowers, and new trees. And the animals don't do that, and the human beings don't do that. But what happens? Nevertheless, a human being carries on, because we, all human beings, live in 2 universes. In fact, a few more, but the main 2 that we walk around with is our soul and our body. Our body is the lowest form of the soul, which is called nephesh, soul. That's a living being. All animals, all insects, all birds, all fish, they are on that level of soul. And we are connected with them. Everything in the universe is connected, and we are all, in fact, one. Every one of us, made up of different genes, different DNA, but it's there. And also we have the cells, and everything in nature has cells. So we see that really everything is one. And we have to remember that. We are all connected with everything, and there is an interaction with everything. Now, we have a parallel universe sitting next to us. In fact, one of them is perhaps only a few centimeters away. Now, in those few centimeters away, there's all sorts of things that are going on. In fact, the trees and everything, all the plants and the animals, they talk to each other. They have their expressions, not as well as human beings, but we don't really know. And we're told in the Zohar, in Kabbalah, that if we were on the same wavelength, we would go out of our mind, because there'd be a cacophony of sound, and it would be impossible to live with us. So we get a blessing. As a human being, we're kept on our own frequency. But every now and again, we sense the other frequencies. We have a feeling. We have a feeling that something is happening. Now, the soul lives in the body, but every night, and sometimes in the afternoon when you go to sleep, 2 parts of that soul actually leave the body, join the other 2 parts of the soul, which is above the head and right further up, in the heavens, but I'll come back to that. It's not way out, billions or trillions of miles away. In fact, it's right next to you, and sometimes even inside of you. So the nefesh is left behind, and that is why we're told that when we go to sleep, we're 99% dead. The body is living, and we're out. The soul, while we are asleep, enters another parallel universe. Now, we get a mumbo-jumbo of dreams. That dreams have all sorts of meanings and memories, and we suddenly in some dreams find ourselves attached to a family that we don't recognize, or a man or a woman very close to us that we don't recognize. But I wanted to say in the film, but in the dream, we actually feel that. Now all of those, if we do not know we're dreaming at the time we're dreaming, do not have any message for us. Don't have a message. So we have two types of dreams. We have one type of dream which sort of takes us into that parallel universe, and we see things happening, and sometimes it's very interesting, and sometimes it's very frightening. But our soul lives like that. Now you say, well, how can that be? Don't forget, I told you before, we're all living our soul level above time, space, and motion. In fact, as I mentioned last week, Berg, he of blessed memory, he used to say they are one as well. Time, space, and motion. So we're living above that. The soul lives above that. And we must strive also that while we're sort of conscious, that we try to live above time, space, and motion. It separates us from chaos. It separates us from our pain, and I don't mean only physical pain, all types of pain. It separates us from worry, and we can handle everything in our lives by separating ourselves. Not easy. It's training. It takes time. It's a lot of the reflection, connection, mind direction, meditation exercises that I've talked about in the past and showed you how to do, the videos I've sent you, and the one we're going to do later. And so we can learn how to lift ourselves up to that level and not just wait till we fall asleep. Now our soul is recycled, because what happens is when a human being dies, the soul leaves the body permanently and leaves the dead nefesh in the body where it belongs, in the ground. And the rest of the soul is set completely free and goes into that other universe. And then after time, just like the plants and the flowers, and the trees, they come back again into a little baby that's born. And that little baby grows and flourishes. Now, sometimes we can recognize this in our children, our grandchildren, and for us, bless them, our great-grandchildren. Sometimes we say, hey, this one is exactly like our late daughter. Or sometimes a number of them got different aspects. It looks like we feel like we're talking to them, because they are probably that very same soul coming up and growing again. But don't forget also that trees, flowers, and plants, while they're still alive, they have their seeds, and they're pollinated one to the other. That's why the bees are in this world. There isn't anything in this world that doesn't have a reason. We discover as we move along. Some things that we think are a nuisance or dangerous, but they still have the reason why they're there. You can take it for granted, everything in this world but everything is there for a reason. Like science is discovering so many new things all of the time, and discoveries that astound us. 100 years ago, would they have believed to see the things that we have today and take for granted? In fact, in those years, if you would have told them these things will be there, they'll think you're mad, or you're trying to con me out of money, to sort of have an impossible dream. And so we have to think that in those parallel universes, when we are dreaming, we are seeing those other images from previous lifetimes, which is happening now because we're above time, space, and motion. There is no such thing in outer space because everything is relative. Einstein taught us that. It's also in the Kabbalah, if you learn it deeply, that we were taught that everything is relative, even time is relative. But when you go out to space and the outer universes, in fact, time, as far as we're concerned, stops. And it's expressed in a very interesting way, but it's not a calculation. That one day in the eyes of God is 1,000 years in the eyes of man. And that shows you that time is limitless. You can't measure it. You just can add more zeros and zeros and zeros, go back as far as you want to go. And so we see in that parallel universe, we get those glimpses while we're asleep. Also, while we're awake, we sometimes get a daydream. Sometimes something flashes into our head. And we are surprised by ideas that come into our mind. And those ideas are flashes from another universe. Now, for us to grasp this even more, we have to remember that we're all moving on the inevitable path of life. And suddenly, things change. I describe it as when a baby is born, the baby is put on a moving stairs at the bottom. And that moving stairs moves higher and higher and higher, going through life. But there is an end. Everybody has to realize there's an end. Just like in snakes and ladders, you've got long ladders, short ladders. Sometimes people slip down the snake, they get injured, they have a major heart attack, they have something else, and they're given a chance to dust themselves off and climb up again. This is the nature of life. But we have to know that everything, and we see it around us with all of life, that everything is limited in time. And so therefore we have to make the most use of the time that we have and behave in exactly the same way as if only a few rungs away is the end of that ladder. And that's how we have to behave and accept. Now, in those daydreams we also sometimes get a flash into another universe to show that we are in actual fact connected to that universe all the time. A very long time ago, when our daughter was very ill, and I completely cut myself off from work and from everything else, and I devoted my time only to her. And it was difficult because financially it hit me. Many other things, I had to let people down, things that people were relying on me, but our daughter came first. Time, space, and motion stopped. And that happens to many, many of us in our lives. Suddenly, a spouse, a partner, can no longer function. You have to give up everything and look after them. Somebody dies. If it's you, you have to stop. If somebody else closed, suddenly things are changed. And so it should be, and it is, with people who are faced with that situation. You let the time carry on and you stay still on your island. And it was difficult. And I remember once going to the synagogue and standing there and feeling, you know, I got this big burden on my shoulder. I keep getting hit. Of course, hoping that she would live as long as possible. I was willing to stay there and carry on the rest of my life if it had to be like that. And my wife also, the same thing. And we did sometimes together and sometimes separately. We had to take turns because I had to sleep sometimes. And I remember standing in the synagogue and I was closing my eyes, and suddenly I saw myself in a fast-flowing river, a very, very strong current. And I was being pulled. But I was holding on to one strand of a 3-ply rope that has a significance. I was holding on to that. And in my mind I said, how long can I hold on? And a voice came into my mind and said, who do you think is holding the other end? Now this was so powerful that it took a whole burden off my shoulders. I felt completely different. And I think this applies to every one of us. Because on everything we have, and however difficult it is, we have to be aware that somebody is holding the other end. Otherwise we drown. And there's no reason for us to leave go of that strand of the rope. Whatever situation, it could be financial, it could be emotional, it could be illness, it could be many, many things. We never, ever leave go because there's somebody standing on, holding it on the other end. Right into that parallel universe. We have this connection all the time. Now I want to give you another example. How many times we're faced with a problem and we can't seem to find a solution? We see what's obvious in front of us, we're in big trouble. In America had the elections, here they had the elections, and you can see exactly how things could suddenly change and not go the right way. So we have to sort of separate ourselves. Now the scientists tell us that out in space, the connection to parallel universes that they talk about, physical universes, is through the black holes, right? And the black screws, they're called, because that's how they're shaped inside, or seem to be shaped from distant space. Those are the channels to get in. We also have channels. We have channels which we have right in front of us, and we have to learn how to use those channels. The channels are through reflection, connection, mind direction, which is no different from prayer. Whatever religion you are, whatever you believe in, but you have to still believe there's only one God, in some form or the other. And in actual fact, because of that spaced repetition of the same prayer again and again, it has that effect on us as well. They are the portals into the other universe. Because many times when we're in that prayer or meditation, we're actual fact being transported somewhere else. We're not here. Our mind is somewhere else. Now, we live in 5 dimensions. We have 5 senses. Those senses we well know. But we use the expression the 6th sense. What is the 6th sense? That's the portal to the parallel universe. We get information from there suddenly, and it comes like a flash. I call it downloading. You're downloading from the big brain into your brain through your soul. But you have things that you never thought of before. You had solutions which nobody thought of before. And many, many times when I've come up with formulas and models to solve very big problems, And I tell them I've heard it now for the first time while I'm talking to you. Very difficult to accept, but if you face the truth when you come up with a good idea, it usually flashes into your head because it's there and it's a matter of training. And this is part of the series of talks and other videos I send you, is to train your mind to connect and to download. Because even if you find sometimes that you go through 2-3 days where you can't think, and or you're studying a subject and you work hard on it and you study and you study and study and it's not getting into your mind. You can't figure it out. But in spaced repetition, again and again and again, give your brain a chance to act like the computer it is. It says, you know, many times you'll switch on your computer and you're told to wait. Outlook is backing up. Why? Because all that information that is in there is being sorted out. And only then, when it's ready, it allows you to start using it, importing or downloading. And so it is with a human being. So you just have to have patience. You can't say, I'm not thinking anymore. I can't concentrate anymore. I don't have a good memory. You know, sometimes before I video a book or record a book, and I've got other books coming out now, I can go through 2-3 days, my mind doesn't download anything. It's just not active. Now you must never allow yourself to think, I'm losing it. It's changed, it's age, it's something else. I'm tired, I'm not well, forget about it. It's all being backed up. And suddenly you reach the eureka moment. And suddenly everything starts working and falls into place. Everybody who's gone through university or any other intensive training knows that you can read and read and read and you're not absorbing. And one day you get that eureka moment. Because that is your connection to the parallel universe. It's there, you can't see it, but every now and again you get a flash. Now there's the other type of dream. The other type of dream is where you know you are dreaming. And that's a sign that you're getting a message. A message which you must not ignore. However crazy it might seem, don't ignore it. Because otherwise you can pay a price. 20 years ago, I had a dream. And in that dream, I was with a doctor who I knew from a parallel universe, obviously. And this doctor, woman doctor, she had a whole lot of reports in front of her, and she said, your life is in danger, and it's entirely up to you. You neglect it, you're gone. You want to live, you have to do something about it. And the dream ended. Well, if I'm told what to do, if that's not depressing, so my personality demands that I do this. I went to a friend of mine who was heading up the university school at Hadassah in Israel. And I said, look, I didn't tell him the dream because I don't know what his reaction would have been. I said, look, do me a favor. I think it's time I had a complete examination. But because you have connections, I want you to get me appointments fast with top specialists in different fields. And so I started on a couple of months of all types of examinations, and everything seemed fine. They put a halter on me. They took my ECG many times. They did many tests, and everything was fine. They never found anything. And then I come down focusing on the heart, and the specialist said, look, come to me and we'll review everything, though I can't see anything. Well, always his assistant would take an ECG just before you walk into the office. Just took my ECG. I come there and he's got a black sheet with big black marks on it. My ECG. And he says, "You're in real trouble." I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "We found out what's wrong with you." I said, "I didn't know anything was wrong with me." He says, "You have been very lucky today because you have unstable fibrillation. We never know when it's going to come. And you're lucky because it happened today. It's not luck. This is part of our life. Every part of our life is planned out in front of us. No accident is an accident. We must just follow the signs, as I had done by not ignoring the dream or not ignoring what somebody says to me. Don't do that, because there's always a message in that. Otherwise, why would you get a message? And so he said, "Look, I'm going to give you Comedin, which is the same as warfarin, and you'll take it. I'm going to give you a little spray as well if you have any pain, and you'll thank me for saving your life." Well, I was feeling very good, but you know, if he told me to do that, and he's part of the whole total picture, so I kept to his instructions. Within 6 weeks, I couldn't walk 100 meters. And I remember once I was still insist to go for my walk. I suddenly stopped in the road. I could not move at all, and I had to call Alice to come and pick me up. Couldn't move. Anyway, I reported back to the doctor. I started to get pains, and that also was unstable every now and again, but there were serious pains. And so he said, "Look, the only way we can find out what's going on is to go inside with a little camera, and if we need to give you a stent, we'll give you a stent." Well, I was also in that time in the universe, at least in my universe, when they had these things. I went inside and he found it was 99% blocked in the main artery. I was moments or days or weeks or months away from moving completely into wherever my parallel universe is. And so he put in the stent and my life was saved. And he said to me, "Look," he told me all the sorts of things that I can't eat anymore, although I was very, very careful. And I said, "I don't understand. I really don't eat all the things I shouldn't eat. How come?" He says, "Well, you can inherit it as well. And when you inherit it, it comes with you, it's in your DNA, and all we can do is to treat it and combat it." So here is something which I did not ignore, and that was a dream. Most people, unfortunately, ignore their dreams. Sometimes the dreams are a very good solution. And sometimes the dream says, you know, get out, make a change, finish, don't carry on with that. Don't ignore it. It's extremely important. Now, we have a festival now coming up. Festival of Light. Hanukkah. Now that Festival of Lights is very important to remember what it means. Before the Big Bang, we are told that the Almighty, because I don't like to call him by the name of God, because if you look at the meanings of God, as I've mentioned before, they are idols. It's the same word, therefore that's the wrong translation. And it gives the wrong idea. You cannot compare the divine with anything that exists in this world. Although the divine is part of everything and in everything, down to each little cell. And that light, very interesting. There are 3 words that are connected one with the other. There's light, there's no end, Ein Sof. That is how the divine is described. No end, limitless time. Remember, above time, space, and motion. And the third thing in there is Raz, secrets, hidden secrets from this world. All of them are linked together with a number, 207. They're exactly, this is called Gematria. I mentioned this to you before, because every letter, every number is a force on their own. We don't always recognize it. In fact, each one of us have our own letter. We have to discover what that means. We have to find out the meaning of that letter. But that letter has that inner force. So every word is made up with an inner force. So if you say light, light is endless light. The secrets of this world, we don't understand. The secrets are from another universe, a parallel universe, that seems to be moving slightly faster than us. That's why suddenly we get a sixth sense. We sense that something is going to happen. And as we continue with this course, I will teach you how to develop that sixth sense. And those people who have been from the beginning, or will have the opportunity to watch the videos from the beginning, will be able to be taken step by step to reach a level that you can develop that sixth sense. The sixth sense is the parallel universe moving slightly faster and telling us what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. We get that sense. We must develop it. We must listen to it. And that also is the other parallel universe we're living in. So you have light, which is continuous. Not the artificial lights that we see, but the light inside of us, in our soul. And then you have the Ein Sof, the limitless time. The divine, it's limitless, you cannot describe, impossible. And then you have Raz, the secrets. Now it's very interesting, the word Olam, world, it comes from the word hidden. In other words, a lot of things in the world we're living in are hidden. They're secrets. Every now and again we get a flash of light coming through. And we realize that we can also live at times above time, space, and motion. That's the way to disconnect from our chaos in our lives. So when we link these three together, and remember the other universes are hidden, and yet they're there. And now I want you to think of this idea. How many times we say, this man is not living in reality. But he's not in the real world. There could be people in politics, in business, in many, many other things, that when you talk to them, you think that they're stupid. You think, how on earth can they think like this? Are they blind? No, they're living in another universe. We move around with people who live in another universe. We're in our own universe. That's why it's extremely important for us not to interact with those people who are negative and do not live in the same universe as you do. Try to imagine this. They don't live in the same universe as you do, so you have to separate yourself from them. Do not expect to change them because they're in another universe. They're linked to another universe. And what you're saying to them is not logical and doesn't make sense. And I don't want you to go into politics, you see things so clear sometimes, and you say, what universe are they living in? Are they mad? Don't they see what's going on? They're not in the same universe as we are. So therefore what we have to do is to lock ourselves in our own garden there's our family, there's our friends, there's sometimes the whole nation. It could be a community. That is your universe. And that's where we thrive and flourish. The minute we go into other negative universes, people who drink, people who take drugs, people who gamble, people who womanize, and do all sorts of other things, which is not really our way of life, if we go into their universe, we gradually become part of their universe. So we have to steer clear. We don't have to fight with anybody. We don't have to argue with anybody. We just have to say, they're living in another universe. And we bear this in mind all the time as we walk around. Everyone will suddenly look different in our own eyes. Everybody suddenly is different. They're not looking the same or seeming the same. And, you know, we have hypnosis all the time. Television, computer, we're glued to the screens. It takes us into another universe, many times an artificial universe. You watch a series. You're watching a film which is coming in series every week, and you're glued to the television to watch it, to listen to it, because you're being transported into their universe. A film about the Queen, it takes you into her universe, a different one, and in a way you're living it while you're watching it. That is why it's so dangerous to take yourself into universes which have no value to you. What does it do in your lives? A lot of us are all the time busy with the universe of football, cricket, games, gambling, computers, films, music, all sorts of things. But what about the family in your own universe? Time is so valuable and it's limited. Remember, we're all on that moving stairs. It's going up all the time. We don't know when it's going to stop for us or for those people around us. And therefore, we also have to train ourselves not to be hypnotized by things that are outside of us. We call them crazy people, but there might be a few sitting here who sat the whole night watching television, the whole of the election and all the comments, everything all the way through. And you sit back and you say, they must be crazy. Because if you want the results, you'll get them in the morning. And you will not be able to change them once they're in. You should be sleeping. You should be with your wife or your husband. You shouldn't be on the television. You shouldn't be at the computer when you should be with your family or your other responsibilities you have. You shouldn't be at football matches. Yes, go to one every now and again for entertainment. But not drive yourself mad with the latest scores. It's another universe, it's not your universe. Because if you want to become part of their universe, then give up on life. Because you've transported yourself somewhere which is negative, not positive. Time is limited and you've got to spend all your time at home. And I mentioned last week that I'm going to expand it. There are people on their deathbed who never ever say, oh, I wish I would have spent more time at work. I would have spent more time at the university. I would have spent more time in the football matches. No. Everybody feels now the time is stopping for me slowly, gradually, and I should have spent more time in my universe with the people who are dear to me and people who are close to me. Because there's another type. As I mentioned before, we all produce seed. The animals, the plants, the flowers, the fish, and human beings. And so we're also producing more plants, the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. They are also the other aspect of the continuing of our lives. And we have to bear that in mind. So when we're all sorting out what we do, if we want to stay in our universe and flourish, if we want our soul to develop, if we want to put ourselves above chaos, above time, space, and motion, we have to examine very, very carefully what our interests are in life. And our interests should only be one thing, and that is our family, our beliefs, and where other people help us or we help other people. We must be occupied with other people. And that's family and friends and people in need and people who are sick and alone. We've got a few people here who actually volunteer and go and visit them. Instead of spending time on football or television or the computer hours and hours and hours, so go over to the hospital, to the cancer ward. Go over to an old age home where there's some people who don't have families visiting them. They're lonely. They also have their life stories. They're living on the universe inside. When you look at somebody at a home and this man or woman is in a chair, very frail, you usually don't take much notice. You don't take them seriously. You don't have much patience for them. But inside is a man or a woman who was once in love, once skipping along, playing football, had all sorts of exciting things as young children, and as they went through, they'd play tennis and they'd swim and go on holiday and have a lot of fun. They were young. Inside that person is that whole history. So we have to think of that. We mustn't look what's on the outside. We must try and look what's on the inside. And so we ourselves must do the same thing. So if we want to live in our own parallel universe, don't block up the channels. And that's the problem. We block up those channels. And we mustn't. And the blocking up is all the things I told you about. Take a peep into other universes. Limit the time on other universes. But at the same time, live very much in our own universe all the time. Because otherwise, this becomes a nice story. It has no value in our own lives. This is what we have to teach our children. This is what we have to teach our families. And this is extremely important to remember this. I promised you that we would not only go deeper into this, but we would take time off every now and again in the talk to do a reflection, connection, mind direction exercise. Because till now, when we've done that, we didn't give ourselves enough time. And that's what I want to do now, to give ourselves more time, and perhaps at the end of the talk, a chance for people to ask questions. Now, I want to explain something to you so there's no misunderstanding. We are going to do the reflection, connection, mind direction. I call it stand-up meditation, though you know I don't like that word meditation, but nobody will know what I'm talking about if I don't use that word. I just want to share with those people who understand what I'm talking about what we're doing. Last week I explained how many cells we have in our body. And if you multiply those number of cells by 10, you come to the same number of stars, planets, and objects in the whole of the universe, according to the scientists, which they calculated, and they sort of rounded off the figures, obviously, to 1 trillion. 10 people together have 1 trillion cells. Outstanding. And if you don't accept it, go Google it and you'll see. And I was so excited when I've seen it, because I haven't come across that. That was certainly a download from another universe, or universes. So that is what happens. The other thing is, when I teach you to open your palms like this, and to download the energy, but it's got to be like I'm doing, not to the side, not slightly, it's got to be like this. Those people who know in the prayers several times a day, we say, Poteach et yadecha. Open your hands and bring down all of the energy that sustains mankind. Everyone in this world. Even though I've told you about a Jewish prayer, but it sustains everybody. You have to draw down that energy that's sent down to us. So that's all part of this reflection, connection, mind direction, stand-up exercise. So nobody should imagine that you are being given a meditation which has been developed in the Far East and is part of another religion or other religions. Not at all. That's why I don't want the word meditation. That's why I don't want it. Because it's been developed. And so a lot of people, when they hear the word meditation, it immediately shocks them. Not everybody believes it. They say, hey, wait a minute. I've seen in meditation they have a little Buddha down there, or they have, I don't know, all sorts of funny things, an elephant, all sorts of things. They have it there, and it's part of another religion. There could be good aspects, I'm not saying they're not, but we live in our universe. And our universe says reflection, connection, mind, direction. Now the other part of this exercise is that we have to concentrate and imagine and paint a picture of where we want to be and what we want to do. We haven't found our way. If we have a problem in our own lives, and it could be a physical problem, it could be a mental problem. We can't concentrate. We can't remember. We have aches and pains. We don't feel well. Don't think of it. Picture the end result, how you see yourself when you were younger or well, and how you ran around and you didn't have any of these problems. Picture that in your mind and hold the picture in your mind during the reflection, connection, mind, direction. It also could be a financial problem. It could be somebody wants to get married. Somebody wants to get out of a marriage. You have to imagine what it's like to live the picture where you want to be. Paint that picture in your mind, whatever that dream is, that might seem impossible now. You might be living in difficult circumstances. Imagine a dream where you want to be, and then you absorb it in your minds. Because everybody wants to move forward, because that's what our soul is here for, to move forward. And every time we slip up, or somebody else slips up, or cheats us, or something goes wrong, it's all part of the university of life. And we have to move forward. So now what I want to, having explained this more in detail, because we never had the time to, I want everybody to stand up. Then you have in mind what I have told you. But look at my palms, not slightly down, like this, because you want to draw the energy in. Now I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think, paint that picture. Don't think of the problem. Think of how you would like it to, what will be the outcome, how it will be. That crazy dream, think about it, concentrate on it, and take it in deep, reflect, and start to connect. You connect to the divine above time, space, and motion. You're drawing down from the parallel universe, which is the universe of your soul. And you draw down with your hands open. You gradually feel those hands getting warmer and warmer. And you're drawing down the energy. And you're drawing it down. Now, while holding up your hands, stand up straight like a tree in the forest. Put your mind with those thoughts and the picture you have in your mind, and stretch up and push your mind up and up and up, moving above yourself. Concentrate on it, push up, and have in mind that prayer or that dream or that picture and push up, and you'll find yourself slipping. Push up again. You're slipping. Push up again. And concentrate. Concentrate only on that one thing that you're doing now. And then sway slightly backwards and forwards. Backwards and forwards to absorb all of this in. And picture it. Dream of it. Push up higher and higher. Don't slip back. And then gradually start to relax. Bring it down. Bring yourself down. Bring your hands down. And please sit down. Now, the first time you do this might or might not have an effect. But I advise people who I've helped, and I've helped an enormous number of people through all sorts of situations. All sorts. They have to do it every morning and every evening. Now, I like to use a mesmerizing music with the power of Ana B'Koach. Ana B'Koach, you don't have to understand the words. It's the inner meaning. It's the secret of the 42 descriptions of the divine, because we agreed before we're not going to use that word God anymore. It's the 42 descriptions of the divine, and that's what we all connect to. And because there's only one, we're also part of that one. All of us are part of it. We have to feel that inside of us and outside of us is that one, and we're all part of that whole. And that's why it's important to treat everybody with great respect, because they're all part of that one. The one is divine. One we call Hashem. One we call him many, many other names. And it doesn't matter what religion, as long as you know there is only one force, one great computer programming designer who's got millions and millions of people writing the program continuously. And that's the cloud that we link up to. And it's a brilliant world if we only remember how to reflect, connect, and mind direct.
Gentleman called Berg?
Yes. Remember Dad, actually, he was a very, very close friend of mine. And he founded the Kabbalah Center. And it grew into a force with over 500,000 followers that changed their lives. But it developed into an organization which is not exactly him. I was very close to him. And of course they're talking in the language of the people who are lost, who don't understand, who have nothing. Many of them don't even know who they are. And he's done a lot for other people's lives by using the Kabbalah. Now, I'm talking to you in this way because those people who don't know from the inside, I was never part of it, although he tried to persuade me to build it up together with him, when it was a very, very small organization, maybe a couple of hundred people. And I said, no, it's not my way. So there's a lot of conflicting opinions from people who've never been inside and do not know. But if you're already attached to a community, or you're attached to your way of life, you don't need it. It's people who do need it, who are lost and have to find their way. To a certain extent, I'm teaching you, not to a certain extent, all the talks I give are connected with Kabbalah, or with books going back that were written by Abraham and of course the Torah, the Bible as well. Everything is sourced in there. It's the codes of life. It's the secrets that we have. And so he was one of the Kabbalists I knew. But I also knew his father-in-law, at least the first father-in-law, who was known as the son of the Baal HaSulam, he's known as, the greatest commentator who opened up the secrets of the Kabbalah, the Zohar, to the rest of the world. They find Arshich and his son, but I was taught also by his son Baruch. And I had the privilege of being taught also by two of his sons. So I managed to move around, and another son-in-law as well. He decided to open up that to everybody in this world, which is extremely important, because everybody is lost. You saw this on the elections now. Completely lost in another universe. But the people who want to find their own universe, this sort of thing, learning about it, is important. And that's why I decided to share this. I mean, I decided, it wasn't up to me, that I have to have a new career. So at the age of 80, I started a new career. And that is caring and sharing and helping other people to understand themselves much more and to help them to develop their lives. Yes.
You mentioned there are some people different.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
You mentioned if some people they are not in your group.
No, not in our universe, yes.
What you do, okay, if it's friend or it's a neighbor or someone you're able to avoid, but what you do if it's your own brother and sister?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because everybody is a soul. You have a child, that child is a separate soul and must be treated like this. And sometimes they're a little bit from another universe, but you have to train them. That's your job, to train them like nurturing flowers or rose trees. Rose trees is not easy to nurture and to grow and make them flourish. You have to work on it, and many times you have to prune them. And if you don't do it, and you concentrate instead of with other universes like football and films and television and all, and computers, etc., and do not spend time with those children in pruning them, in developing them, in helping them to grow, they will gradually stay out of your universe. But we have to be very, very careful of bad people. We have to be very careful what area we live in. And if necessary, we move if we're surrounded by bad neighbors. We have to be careful. Whether it's drugs or drinking, whatever isn't in our universe. Now you might say that's difficult, but always in life. I remember a song when I was much younger. Get out of the back, Jack, make your life free, make a plan, Sam, and just get out. In other words, if you find that you're in the wrong partnership, marriage, business, community you belong to, why fight or try to push against? They don't think like you. So go to people who do think like you. Make sure that your children also, and young adults, I'm saying children, your child till you're 50, I think, or 60. I've got children who are grandparents. And it never stops. You have to all the time connect with your own universe and make sure that when you're choosing a friend, especially when it comes to university, and parents have to watch this very carefully. If there's binge drinking there, if there's drug, better not go to university. Better not. There are a lot of people who say, no, I don't want my children to go to university. I don't want my children to go to that type of school. Why? Because the influence is bad. And gradually they get pulled into that other universe. Now it's difficult, but we have to go to the places where we feel at home. And if you don't feel at home, then don't go to those places. Even if they're a next door neighbor, even if it's a member of your own family. Difficult to live with, but if you do not feel that you can have an influence, the body works and the mind works in wonderful ways. We don't need pain. We don't need pain at all. We only need pain to tell us to do something about it. And once we've done something about it, it's all in the mind. You drain the pain because it's mainly in the brain. And the same applies to the pain you can have sometimes with a member of your family. You do not have to live with that pain. You sit down, you can talk frankly with them. It's not my way of life. I don't feel happy. Let's love each other. Let's try to find a way to live partially in our own universe together, and you live in yours. But when you find that, there are times when you actually cut off from members of the family. Not because you've had a fight, that's wrong, but because they're not part of your universe. You must not make yourself unhappy or other people around you unhappy. It's not possible. And you can't turn around and say, well, what can I do? I'm in university. My son's in university. It's the best university. It's a course that we tried very hard to get in. We're very lucky. He's one out of 1,000 candidates. But they drink and take drugs. Pull him out. What's more important? His personality, his future, or to be highly educated person who has been destroyed. And that's the balance we have to take. Nobody ever should say in their lives, what can I do? Never say that. You move. You move your house, you move your family, you move your job, but you keep moving. And you actually, that 42, we come back to that, you can move up to 42 times in your own life. By the way, I haven't quite hit the 42 times yet, so I know there's a lot for me to do still. But a lot of that 42 has been used up. Because I always changed. And I changed, and as you read through my books, you'll see how many times I've changed and done other things. As soon as I saw that's not my universe, or the other people that are in it are not my way of thinking, I can't change them. I can't persuade them. Can you make Corbyn think any differently? Could you make anyone else think any differently? No. So you shouldn't be in that universe. And that's as simple as that. But it's hard. It's simple, but it's hard. But if you do it, you'll live a full life.
So you just mentioned that you have to influence your children when they are a little adult, but they have their own mind as well, and they will not listen to reason because they become like babies, and they think we are old-fashioned. So where do you draw the limit?
Well, look, let me tell you this. One of the things I've always said to my children, and even the older ones, and they respect this a lot. I said, look, I was once your age.
Yeah.
I understand exactly where you're coming from, because I thought also my parents were old-fashioned and they weren't living in this world and they're from another generation and they can't understand me. I also thought like that. And many of the thoughts that you have today, 20 years ago, did you think like that? As you're growing older, did you think like that? So I want you to have an open mind and you get them to talk. Same as you do with somebody who doesn't agree with you. Don't fight with them. Sit down and give them a chance to tell their own thoughts and ideas. Because if you remember the poem, Life is Like a Mirror, that's in the beginning of my book, and I sent you the video as well, when everybody connected. Everybody has their own level of truth. Deep down inside, whatever you say, they believe that they are right. There are very few people in this world who are liars or dishonest. Might sound strange to say that, because they honestly believe what they're saying is right. However outrageous it is, wicked it is, whatever you hear, come fight with them, because they really believe that they are right. Therefore, the most important thing, this is part of conflict resolution, not only with children, but everybody one deals with, conflict resolution is simply this. You let them talk. You give them respect. You even say, look, deep down inside, I know you're telling me the truth and you believe in what you're saying. I would like to hear everything you have to tell. You let them talk. Don't argue with them at all. And then they're willing to listen to you. And then you have a chance to come to a compromise. And say, you can't live my way. I'm living my life. I can't live your life. But perhaps on this part we can compromise so as we can live together and have a relationship together. Because I love you So I'll accept you as you are, and you love me, and you'll accept me as I am. And together we'll work this out, and gradually it repairs itself. And this applies to everything in life, husband and wife. Many, many times they have differences, but they have to respect each other. Not think they're an idiot, or say it. Sit down and listen. Let them tell you they might, in your mind, might be wrong, but they believe they are right. However angry they are, they really believe they are right. So listen, and then they'll listen to you. And then you find a compromise, and you find a way to live together, and you gradually resolve the conflict. Yes?
When you said he's in another universe, do you mean he's another wavelength? You know?
Yes. It's another wavelength. It's another wavelength, as they said. Many sounds we don't hear because it's several decibels higher, and therefore we can't hear it. There are many sounds. In fact, I bought something in our house which is supposed to drive insects mad, and it makes a noise which we can't hear. But they are driven mad and they run away and they leave the house. At least I believe it's there. That's how they sell it. But that's known. Yeah, so most people in life is just on another level we can't hear. And many people can't hear what you're saying. People talk at each other instead of to each other. And that's the important key. They are on a different wavelength. But you know, if you tune it very, very, very carefully, you could suddenly connect. It's like many years ago, and nobody experiences this today, you listen to BBC and you're in Africa or in another place. And one of the jokes that I never forget, they used to say, they crash landed in some place in Africa, and a man runs over to them, a native, and he starts speaking in beautiful English, but he's sort of stuttering and missing everything. So he said, "That's fantastic. Where did you learn English and why do you speak like that?" He says, "I've been listening to the BBC." Right? And that is it. Alice, you're right, thank you. That is the wavelength. It's the short wave. By the way, the short wave is the blue wave, which I've spoken about before, and we'll go in deeper again next time. Thank you. Just think of the possibilities. Fantastical stories showing how it all works in real life. Join the thousands who learnt the secrets that changed their lives. Start this unique experience. Read a chapter from my new book. Think, stand up, and walk tall. Go to my website and enjoy reading.